Well, there are a number of reasons why. For some reason, about 20% of the British population, I can't speak for the American population, but from about 20% of the British population really hate Britain and all it stands for. Now, these are white liberals. They're often well-educated, but they have no real understanding or caring for history, and they would obliterate history if they could. They would forget about Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights, they would say that they embrace a greater freedom. But in fact, when they're in government, what they do is subtract all the freedoms that they can possibly get their hands on from the society that they're in. I don't know what you do about those 20%. I think they're just, what do they say? The treason of the clerics.
Why do they seem to always be in control? We have the same types here who claim they want all this liberty, but really they come to control. Like it's passed the House here to restrict free speech and have speech laws where if something you say hurts someone's feelings, you get arrested. I mean, how can that be happening in the United States? How can that be happening in Europe? How can this be going on?
Well, Europe has a tradition of autocracy and intolerance. America is still the last best hope of mankind. And I hope that you will learn from our lessons. But, I mean, I think in Europe, and particularly in my country, the liberal point of view is absolutely without question in public office. You daren't raise a question. Because if you do, you will be literally branded a fascist. No matter that you sort of say, well, look, these are the things I believe in, equality, democracy, these are the things. But that doesn't matter. And there are certain things that are bywords for liberalism. If you don't endorse them, then really you're a fascist.
So what do? Get outside the comfort zone and stop caring if they brand us and point out they are the ones behaving like fascists with the new global carbon tax? I don't want to get you involved here in a heresy. I don't want to get you burned at the stake here.
There it is. You're a fascist, you see, because you are, I detect from your tone that you are a global warming skeptic.
I'm a denier.
Or is it a climate change skeptic? Because I think the thing has moved on slightly from global warming now to climate change. Yes, well, it is true. Climate changes. That's one of the nature of being a sort of dynamic living planet. I mean, I don't suppose the climate's changing too much on Venus right at the moment, because the bit near the sun is melting. But anyway, that would be one of the real reason why the liberals. I'm only using that in the most pejorative way. There is something else called a liberal tradition, which
the people calling themselves liberals, you would call yourself, or I would call myself a classical liberal. I want the classical real freedoms, not their fake straitjacket, and you're being careful not to commit thought crime because some European countries do want to arrest people. Don't listen. They're now teaching that summer is abnormal, and some kids don't think you're supposed to have seasons. Like you said, first it's global warming, now it's climate change. But go ahead, sir.
No. I mean, the real reason they're getting away with it is that people like me and people like you have more interesting things to do with our lives than to stand up and engage in political activity. But our situation is so dire here that I'm actually seriously thinking of standing for the British Parliament at the next election. Unfortunately, I've not lived my life, in that politically correct way that one should if one's going to be a politician. I have far too many scarecrows, skeletons rather, in my closet, and I will be ripped to shreds if I do. But the fault is ours. Because we were too busy, too self-important, and too absorbed with the wonderful and myriad things that we can do with our lives in this glorious civilization we live in, to actually stop the cockroaches from running.
And now, I was about to say that, we've got to climb in and remove the parasites that are now arming themselves against us.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I mean, I spoke to a senior civil servant about 2 years ago, and I said, well, you know, what do you see happening? He said, well, we will be a small part of the European Union. We will be ruled from Brussels. We will get rid of the monarchy, and we will be a small and peaceful part of Europe. And I said, well, I mean, didn't you take an oath of allegiance as a part of your thing to serve the crown in Parliament and things like that? And he said, well, I mean, I think we can dispose of that into the dustbin of history. I said, you know, in my eyes, sir, you're just a traitor. You're just a quisling and a traitor. And he smiled at me and said, well, fortunately, you can't do anything about it.
Incredible arrogance. I've run into similar things. This is an amazing interview, sir. We're about to break and come back with another segment. But to continue this, in fact, I would like to get some into the film, Reclaiming the Blade, which really does have contained in it a great portion of the spirit of liberty. And we're just honored that you're spending time with us today here to fight for what's left of Western civilization, which is being pulled down and under assault because those very ideals threaten the parasites that now infest our society. But I think the sleeping giant that is those that love liberty is beginning to rise. Stay with us. Rhys Davies, the legendary actor, will be with us till 40 after. Then we're going to get the maker of the film, Reclaiming the Blade, on with us for the balance of the time. I'm sorry we're not covering Michael Jackson and his funeral, but I think there's been enough coverage of that today. But Mr. Davies, it intrigues me. We'll talk some in the final segment about the film Reclaiming the Blade, about more of your political ideas, because I sense that you're almost exploding with the desire to speak up and say no to what's happening. Are you concerned about the European Union trying to force the Lisbon Treaty on countries that have voted it down time and time again? And the Labour Party said that they wouldn't go along with it without a vote, but now they're covertly using the bureaucracy to bring Britannia under the yoke of Europe. Or what are some of your other concerns that would make you run for Parliament?
That would be one. We were promised a referendum. We had a referendum many years ago, I think about 1976 or something like that, to enter the EU, to enter the common market. And the common market is what most of us want. Frankly, it's what most Europeans want. But not many people, other than the paid bureaucrats, want a close political union. Cooperation between states is admirable and wonderful. But really, I don't want to make a political statement here and be arrested and summarily extradited to Greece to stand up because it contravenes Greek law. We are trading our liberties at an alarming rate, and the only reason that this government is still in power is because Brown has been told by the EU, stay there until the Irish can have their third referendum, and this time we'll shake the pips and make it clear that they'll be bankrupt if they don't vote for an EU union. And then, of course, it becomes automatic.
Wow.
And theoretically irreversible. And Brown, of course, will end up getting a senior job in the EU. It is straightforward political corruption. It's corruption and treason at the highest level. And, of course, the first thing this government did, of course, when they got into power, was to remove the penalties for treason. You can no longer hang a man for treason. No. That's too unkind to him. Maybe send him to prison for 3 years, if he has to.
Well, it is treason to have now Blair about to be EU head for his treason, and they've got millions of surveillance cameras and secret police everywhere, and they're going to have climate cops with climate rationing. I mean, this is just a way for the government control freaks to literally enslave everybody. And you look at the polls, the Brits, the French, the Irish, none of them want this, but it continues to steamroller forward. Just thank God you're speaking up, and I hope many others will start speaking up.
There is a huge groundswell of resentment And it really only needs a trigger for this to become really very unpleasant and very socially explosive and divisive.
Very unpleasant. I like the way you put that. Absolutely. Everybody worldwide wants liberty. They don't want tyranny. Speaking of the blade, you know,
that's not. You see, that's the sad thing. That's the saddest thing of all. Not everybody wants freedom.
I guess you're right.
Some people want their decisions made for them.
Well, it seems like I want freedom, so I think everybody else wants it. But I guess you're right. A lot of people do want to live under a nanny state control freak system. But